Welcome to Two Millennials and Mom, where we bring you engaging conversations and respectful disagreement across the social spectrum.
Injected with the quirks of everyday life.
Grow up as we navigate the complexities of this modern world with all the humor and warmth we can muster.
And the occasional gentle ribbing. We're glad you're here. Happy listening.
Welcome to Two Millennials and Mom. I'm Mom.
I'm Cole.
I'm Callie.
How are y'all today?
I'm
Hanging
doing
in there.
well. Cole, we got to find a better answer for you. That's always your answer. It always makes me want to hug you. So I have a happy topic for us today.
Yay!
I want to talk to you guys about happiness.
Okay.
So in this episode, we're exploring the meaning of happiness, what it is, what it isn't, and why it feels harder than ever to hold on to. From fleeting pleasures to deep contentment, we're digging into what science, culture, and personal experience reveal about the pursuit of joy. Does money help? Are we too obsessed with chasing happy vibes? And most importantly, what actually works?
Okay.
Like I said, I always want to give Cole a hug, but I want to chat with you guys and figure out what makes you happy. What does that
Let me
mean
just
to you?
say, first off, Cole gives the best hugs back. So
It's true.
Yeah, I don't think you should read too much into my answer. I'm trying to represent contentment, but I'm not really extreme on either end of the spectrum. I'm a little sleepy today.
Fair enough. So in a previous episode here, just recently, we talked about the World Happiness Report, who is most happy, where they kind of fall on the kind of lineup of rich to poor countries, and how there are some commonalities between those lists, but mainly there are not. So I wanted to kind of dig a little bit deeper into happiness, what it is and why it is important. You know, Aristotle said, happiness is the meaning and the purpose of life, which I feel like when you start ruminating on that a little bit, it kind of sits into your soul. But
Yeah.
I'm really curious, what does that look like for each of you? What makes you most happy, brings you joy?
I guess I'm going to say, is happiness and joy the same thing?
We'll get into it.
I think happiness is a part of joy, but I don't think it's all of it.
Yeah, I would
So-
get there.
I think joy is more an overall contentment with your state of being, whereas happiness is a specific piece of that I don't know a great way to articulate this, but like maybe I can give an example. Like reminiscing on my grandfather doesn't particularly bring me happiness thinking about no longer him being here, but reminiscing on the impact that he had on my life brings me joy.
Okay.
So it's interesting that you say that, and you've kind of broken it down into two pieces, which is what especially ancient Greek philosophers and modern day psychologists have talked about. There are two parts to happiness: Hedonia, which is short-term pleasure that we get from fun experiences, and Eudaimonia, the deeper, I'm hoping I'm saying those right, but the deeper,
Pretty
more
close.
meaningful happiness that comes from living life aligned with your values. Hedonia feels good right now, but you don't, oh shit. But eudaimonia sticks around.
Eudaimonia.
I'm trying, guys. I'm trying. I'm not Greek and I'm really sucking at this. But eudaimonia sticks around and might even make you healthier and live longer. These terms come from ancient Greek philosophy and have been revived in modern positive psychology to explain the two different pathways to happiness. Like I said, hedonic happiness is about experiencing pleasure and avoiding pain. It's the feel-good kind of happiness, immediate gratification, comfort, and enjoyment. You might get this from eating your favorite dessert or food, or going on a vacation, or watching a funny movie, even scrolling TikTok. That quick, short burst.
It's the ancient Greek term for a dopamine hit.
Yes, quick and temporary. It's often tied to short-term positive emotions, and research shows that these positive pleasures do matter, but tend to be fleeting. Relying on hedonic pleasures alone doesn't usually lead to deep or lasting well-being. Then, on the other hand, you have eudaimonic happiness, And that's about meaning, purpose, and self-realization. It's the kind of happiness that comes from what doing truly matters, even when it's difficult. Volunteering for your favorite cause that you care about, pursuing your lifelong goals or dreams, callings, raising a child or mentoring somebody, overcoming adversity and growing from it. Eudaimonia is more strongly linked to long-term life satisfaction than Hedonia. And so I went and started digging into a couple of studies because I was sure that there had to be research on this. We talked about the World Happiness Report. Who else is doing these kind of studies?
Yeah.
And I found, you guys, what I thought was really interesting.
Okay.
The longest running study on human happiness is done at Harvard. It has been tracking participants for over 80 years.
That's amazing.
I thought I was really wild. I mean, what an interesting kind of data set that you have over the course of 80 years.
So they started with Harvard college guys, right?
Yes.
And then a few years later added some Boston kids to it who were from a low income neighborhood.
Yes.
But they've tracked them annually. They talk to them and give them questionnaires and meet with them over 80 years to determine what really, what's going on in their life. And they had some fascinating things. I think one of the, big ones was that they discovered that it wasn't cholesterol. That wasn't one of the key points, but it was the happiness and their contentment in their life that really showed their longevity. So it was really interesting.
I thought another one of the interesting findings there was one of the most important factors that they found was like their development of relationships, the healthiness of the relationships that they had kind of nurtured throughout their lives was one of the most important indicators as to their health and well-being.
And their longevity.
Yeah.
And how tied together it all is. This is not just, again, that temporary fleeting dopamine hit. This has an impact on your long-term health and life. There was something in it that was talking about the current director of the study and how he's emphasizing that social connections are a superpower for well-being and longevity. And I started thinking, if this study has been going on for 80 years, how many directors have there been? I should have gone and looked.
There's 4.
There were?
Yeah. I think, I don't remember what I read it in, but the first guy that started out with it did it for a number of years.
Oh, yeah.
And the person, Waldinger, is a current guy, and he's not young himself. But yeah, they've had 4 different directors, but it's been really fascinating. And I think he's one of the guys decided to bring in their wives and bring in how that also played. So they've not just interviewed these men over 80 years, but they've interviewed their wives and their children to see how that all came together. And when it came down to it, like you said, Cole, the majority of it talked about happy relationships. And I thought it was really funny, and I made fun of your dad with this because it talked about even couples who bicker continuously but count on each other and trust that the other one's going to be there have better relationships and longer longevity. And
More longevity.
More longevity than couples who are really cross with each other and don't trust each other. So I laughed at your dad and I said, so there's hope for us.
I was just thinking about this, but Dad's got a pretty wide circle of friends, much wider than mine, I would say.
Mine
He's
too.
going to live forever.
Well, we're in trouble then because I'm supposed to go first, and I'm not living forever. No cryogenics for me.
So one of the other ones, I remember reading about a couple of articles about it when this research was first kind of disseminated amongst the public back in the beginning of 2024. I would classify myself as a pretty optimistic person, and I'd never thought anything more about it than that. I think it's more fun and I think it's easier, and I would much rather be happy than to be a pessimist and be grumpy all of the time. But there was a 30-year...
Come to the dark side. We have cookies.
Hey, I had cookies too. In fact, Ryan made cookies this week. He made peanut butter cookies for me and made not one type, but 3 types. And I was thrilled every single bite. I was pretty pumped. I was
Were
thinking
you
about Dad.
happy?
I was. I was hedonically happy.
Okay.
But now they're all gone and now I'm grumpy again. But there was a 30-year study conducted through the Mayo Clinic that found individuals with an optimistic outlook had a significantly lower risk of early death compared to their pessimistic counterparts. Specifically, pessimists, y'all, this blew my mind. Pessimists had a 19% higher rate of mortality. The research that they did underscored the impact of a positive mindset on overall health and longevity. Those health benefits provide anything from an increased lifespan, lower rates of depression, lower levels of distress and pain. But this is when it starts getting really crazy to me. Having a positive outlook on life, being optimistic, led to greater resistance to illnesses, better psychological and physical well-being, better cardiovascular health, and a reduced risk of death from cardiovascular diseases and stroke, reduced risk of death from cancer, death from respiratory condition or infections, and better coping skills during hardship and times of stress.
It seems a little almost too good to be true.
Yeah.
You know,
But,
you
you know,
say
as we've-
that, but think about all of the just kind of running off of those two studies together, specifically talking about having nurtured positive relationships. How many anecdotal examples are there of couples who have been married for 50 years and as soon as one goes, the next follows right after them?
Almost immediately.
That's true.
Mhm.
That's true.
Yeah.
You know, I think, and I may be kind of going out on a limb here, but I mean, from a like a logic and reason perspective, I can kind of see how this makes sense. If you're happy and positive all of the time, if you have these nurtured relationships and you have an optimistic outlook on life, you have reasons to take care of yourself better. You have reasons to live, to say, hey, I want to be here as long as I can so that I can continue to grow and nurture and give and take from these relationships that I have developed throughout my life. And so, I mean, it makes sense. Like, you're probably going to take care of yourself a little bit better because you have that reason for existence, if you will. Whereas if you have this pessimistic outlook, I would imagine that you're probably less likely to take good care of yourself. So you're not going to be as mindful of your diet and you're not going to be as mindful of health issues. And in now we're maybe getting into I'm getting into what for me might be a little woo woo, but I mean, I think to an extent manifestation of kind of ideas, I think to a point is real. To say, hey, I have this really positive outlook on life, I think that the will alone has some power to it to keep your body in better condition.
I do think Will does. As we've kind of begun to examine this topic, though, I've found myself asking myself, are you an optimist? Are you? I mean, Callie, I definitely think that you are an optimist. And I will say this, I think that because I know how hard you strive to be kind, that I think that has also affected that your optimism and your outlook, because you are looking for things to be kind about and for people to be kind. But as I tried to examine myself, I mean, you want to respond immediately and go, "Oh, I'm an optimist." But if you ask me if the glass is half full or half empty, I mean, that's kind of dependent on the day. You know, how I'm going to
Yeah, it
respond
also
to that.
depends. Did you just fill it up or did you just drink half of it?
Exactly. Yeah. So Cole, you and I may not be very good at this kind of stuff because I think mine changes. I mean, I think mine adjust. And so,
Situationally.
yes, very situational. And so I'm struggling with this because I can't just positively identify myself and say, oh, you know, you have a good outlook and I mean, there are things that I definitely am worried about. I am partially a worrier, and I wonder how that kind of plays into this too, you know, what the effect is on down the line. But I also think have some really great relationships. I have the two of you that I feel like are very positive relationships. I know that I can count on the two of you. I know that if something critical really happened, it would take one text and you guys would be there. Your dad is the same way. He is completely reliable. I've not felt good the last couple of weeks, and I've really struggled with him having to do things for me, stupid things like making up the bed or bending over to pick something up out of the floor for me because, I couldn't. That was really hard for me to do over the last couple of weeks. And I've hated the fact that he's had to take care of me. And we've talked about it multiple times. And
He doesn't mind at all.
yeah, he hasn't hesitated in any way. He's been willing to adjust his schedule or his plans. Do I need to stay home to do this today, to be with you so that you're okay? So, I mean, if I look at it from that perspective, I have great relationships. And yet there's that thing in my mind going, well, how many good relationships do you need to have? Is one enough? Do you need 10? Do you need 20? How many relationships does this, affects this?
This must be where you must be where I get it from with that kind of line of thinking, but I don't know that you should look at it that way. I don't think that you should say, I have to meet it, because it's not a quota.
It's a quality over quantity thing.
Yeah.
Do the relationships that you have right now meet that necessity for you? Do they meet your personal
The way I look at it is, do they serve you and them? And if
That's
they serve both of you, that's
Yeah.
a valuable relationship.
Yeah.
Everybody wins. I mean, and you guys talk, like, I certainly have off days for sure, without question, but I
Guilty.
really enjoy, sure. I mean, but I really enjoy having a positive outlook on life. And how often, Mom, will you come and say, hey, this is what's going on? My response almost every time is, hang on, let me shift your perspective. What if you
Yes.
look at it from this way? Because really, truly, in this Mayo Clinic article and research talks about optimism is not genetic. Optimism is a muscle. It is a skill to be exercised and to be worked on and done over and over and over. And Cole talked about it when we were getting ready and preparing for this episode. This is a choice. You have to choose happiness, and it's not a one-time deal. Okay, I'm going to choose happiness and now I'm happy forever. You have to do it every day, all day long, multiple times a day, and then do it again tomorrow.
Yeah,
And
it's a conscious decision to say,
yeah,
what I have right now is enough.
yeah.
And even if that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to stop striving for something better, but you can't allow that desire for improvement to be a negative impact. You can say, okay, I took a step today and tomorrow I have another step to take, but I took a step today, and that's good
Something.
enough.
That
That's
counts.
something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, this article talks about, again, shifting your perspective. Instead of negative self-talk, talk about positive thinking. Do you guys remember here? It was a big thing several years ago. Eat this, not that. This, I feel like, is the think this, not that situation.
Yeah.
And so instead of coming to something saying, hey, I've never done this before, think of it in your brain as, this is an opportunity for me to learn something new.
Yeah. And there have been several studies on this. I mean,
oh yeah,
in all kinds of things. Athletes, it is scientifically proven that if you think and speak detrimentally to yourself about your performance, you will perform worse.
yes.
I thought one of the most fascinating sentences out of this was, don't say anything to yourself that you wouldn't say to anyone else. Don't self-talk to yourself
I
the
don't
way
know.
you would talk.
That may not be enough for some people, because I know some people who will say anything to anybody.
Yeah.
That doesn't make it great.
Yeah.
I think it was helpful for me though, because I think my generation grew up with some of that negative self-talk, particularly as a female. You're not skinny enough, you're not tall enough, you're not this enough. And so I wouldn't walk up to somebody and go, you're just not tall enough. So when I put it to very practical terms like that, I think that is a really good thing to say. But there were lots of things that they suggested, if it's too complicated versus I'll tackle this from a different angle.
I'm not going to get any better at this versus I'm going to give it another try.
Yeah, it's really good. So we talked about that it's a daily thing and putting it into practice. And we also talked about some of the ways to do that. Positive thinking is part of that. I think you'll also find people that talk to you about gratitude. And several years ago, I think this was one of the most impressive things that he did in leading an organization. The CEO of our company asked everyone on a daily basis to write 3 things that they were grateful for. And I literally had a little book and on a reminder, on a tickler, that every day I wrote down 3 things. And some days it wasn't quite as easy as the other.
Sure.
And some days you feel like, just putting you and your dad down is not enough to be grateful for, but it really is enough to be grateful for if that's what that day entails. If that's
What do you do every November?
I do my thankfuls every November.
Every November
my
you do your thankfuls. It's one of your favorite holidays, specifically
favorite things.
because how good does it make you feel? And you don't even have to share it with anybody else. You don't have to call Callie and say, "Hey, I'm thankful for this today." You can write it to yourself. Just that little bit of gratitude. Like when I am sitting at work and I'm having a really, really, really bad day, I say, "You know what? You're blessed to be where you are right now."
Oh, yeah.
Like you work with people that are intelligent and kind and are there to help you. You have people that will stand up for you in bad situations. You have family that will be there for you no matter what. You're not hungry. You're not tired. You have a roof over your head. You have a bed to sleep in. You have a TV to watch silly movies on. There's so much to be thankful.
Yeah.
And after I have one of those hard calls, I can sit there and run through a couple of those and just reset, completely refresh. And it's not always easy to do that, but
Yeah, I
it
think that's the
works
thing.
every
It's not
time.
easy, but it has to be that decision that you make.
We can do hard things. We
Good for
can.
you, make you strong.
Yeah. But again, that's why I go back to optimism and positivity as a muscle. It gets so much easier the more you practice it, the more you do it. And I think that there's so much power in that. It is totally and completely in your control, in your grasp. You just have to choose it. And you have to keep choosing it. And you have to forgive yourself on those days when it just feels too big that you can't.
I do think it's a lifestyle. I think it's the gratitude and teaching that. I know one of the things that I started out with was a bullet journal. And there's lots of bullet journal things out there, and there are some really creative people. And I think that's part of their positivity for their life. But the guy, Ryder Carroll, who really developed that system, did it based on defining what your values were and reviewing what you were doing in your life. Are you getting to those values? Are you approaching those, and are you doing something deliberate to get to them? So I think that's just another piece of that, is knowing the value that you want and working towards that value on an everyday basis.
For sure.
So, question. We have talked about some people on this podcast who have lots of money, and we've talked about people who don't have very much money. So, who's the happiest one?
Those who choose it.
Do what?
Those who choose it.
Oh, well, aren't you smart?
I mean,
So, it
I could
doesn't
be
have
totally
anything
wrong.
to do.
Do what?
It doesn't have anything to do with money. I mean, I think, was it Scott Galloway who said, it's easier if you have some money, but
Sure.
it doesn't.
And Callie, that book that you sent, I was listening to it yesterday, and I think the way he words it is, money does buy happiness up to a point.
Yes. So let me shift gears just a little bit, because I put together a little bit of a game.
Uh-oh.
Truth versus myth, talking specifically about money and happiness and how
Okay.
they kind of correlate. So I've got a couple of questions for you. Cue the game show music. So myth number 1, more money always means more happiness. True or false? So the truth
Ever
is,
heard of the Scrooge?
The truth is, it does, but only to a point. Emotional well-being levels drop off around, in the United States, around $75 to $1,000 a year. Beyond that, it's diminishing returns. That gives you a level of financial security that you can pay your bills, that you can go purchase a service to help you with therapy, to work through those things. Anything beyond that, extra income helps life satisfaction much more than your daily mood. There's a quote in here. After a while, the yacht doesn't feel that much different than being on a boat with your friends.
That's good.
But again, it goes back to that relationship things. That's what matters, not the empty mega yacht that nobody else has and can be on. Number 2, money solves emotional problems. Fact or fiction?
False.
Fiction. Totally false. So people with high incomes still experience loneliness, anxiety, and depression. A 2023 mega analysis showed that miserable rich people often stay miserable if root issues aren't addressed.
Wow.
Again, you have to choose it. You have to choose to go and say, hey, I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to dig myself out of this hole. I'm going to choose to not let this ruin my day, week, life, month, day, month, life, whatever way, either way.
We knew what you were trying to say.
Thank you. Thank you. Number 3, buying stuff makes you happier.
In the short
Sometimes.
term.
So according to research that came out of Cornell, experiences are greater than things. Experience brings lasting joy, much more so than material possessions. Why? Because they create memories, build identity, and foster connection.
I also think it kind of depends. I think there are certain things that you can purchase that can help with that. I also think there are things that you can purchase that can be detrimental to that. Everybody's heard of buyer's remorse.
Sure.
If you overextend yourself, that's not going to make you happier. It's going to make you less happy because now you're stressed out. Okay, can I really afford a $600 a month car payment? Do I really need this Cadillac that I'm paying more than I really can afford for? No, that's going to bring more stress in my life. I mean, driving the cool car, if you're miserable while you're driving the cool car, then going back to Scott, the way he said it is, what is it? Drive a Hyundai and take your wife to Boca?
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, that Hyundai is not going to bring you nearly the level of satisfaction and joy than that week of time with your wife in Boca.
Yeah.
Enjoy life. Your car doesn't matter. Okay. Number 4, quote, if I made just 20% more, then I would be happy.
I mean, I think you could word it as, if I made 20% more, it would be easier for me to be happy. But money is a tool. I'm going to bring up Rogan here for a minute, but he calls money fun coupons. It's fun tickets. And that's a great way to think about it, because you can get tired of going to the carnival eventually.
Oh, yeah.
Eventually, you're going to get wore out of doing this thing. And so,
sick from all of the
fair food.
Yeah. And
Too much of a good thing is not a good thing.
Like, just based on all of the research that we've looked at so far, like, I don't think that should be your measure of happiness is, if I can make 20% more, I'll be happy. No, you won't.
Because
what happens? That's always, you need another 20% and another 20% and another 20% that if that's the goal, then maybe.
Because you just adjust your lifestyle. If you're overextending yourself at $40,000 a year and you start making $50,000 a year, you're just going to expand yourself to your $50,000 lifestyle instead of your $40,000 lifestyle.
Exactly. The goal line keeps moving. Yeah. It never stays in the same place. And that comes from people who are making $50,000 a year or $50 million a year. The 20% is not the deciding factor of whether or not you get to be happy.
It's what you do with it.
Yeah. Studies show that people consistently believe that they'll be happy with just a little bit more, regardless of how much they already earn. They call this the hedonic treadmill. Get off the hamster wheel. Go choose to be happy.
And we've talked previously that the stimulus checks, that $5,600, $6,000 for those families that were below poverty level made a significant difference. So I think you have to look at this a little bit different, but that's not just, I need to make another 20%. There's a level that people need, a base level. And once you're at that base level, what that means and how you look at that in your life of, do I just need more or more or more? Or like you said, Cole, where your basic needs are met, that's where the goal needs to be, where your basic needs are met and everything else is icing on the cake.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, then our last one for my game here. And I feel like we've kind of touched on this already, but I'm going to hit it anyway. Rich countries are the happiest.
Well, we already know that's not true.
Yes.
So again, according to the World Happiness Report, countries like Finland, Bhutan, Costa Rica often top the happiness rankings, not because of wealth, but due to community ties, trust in institutions, and work-life balance.
You know, shout out to Trey, because he called me this week and we were talking about that episode where we were talking about that World Happiness Index. And I think we probably touched on it on that episode, but he just kind of reiterated that, yeah, America might be the biggest economy in the world, but the distribution of wealth is not there. So on average, Americans are not the wealthiest people in the world
Worldwide.
because it's so concentrated in a small subset of people, that level of wealth. The rest of our country, I mean, we've said it over and over, 80% of people live paycheck to paycheck. That's not wealthy.
Yep. And I think
when
that you can
look,
see that.
Yeah, when you look at those countries that are higher on that index, they have a much more even distribution.
That's sometimes true and sometimes not, because I also spoke to Trey and started running some of the numbers. Israel, I think, is number 8 or 9 in the top 10 of the happiest countries, and their wealth distribution is very skewed, just like ours is. In fact, they have more people who live below, proportionally, they have more people who live below the poverty line than we do in the United States. And
Really?
they still have, again, better community ties, more trust in their institutions, and better work-life balance. And so money is not the answer. And he and I went through and looked up the poverty line, and the poverty line there is something like, it's crazy low. And yet they're still in the top 10 of the happiest countries. And that wealth distribution is totally and completely skewed like ours is, that it isn't about money. Can money buy happiness? It makes me think of that song. Oh, I can't think of who sings it. It's going to kill me. Money can't buy you happiness, but it can buy you a boat, and it can buy you a cooler full of beer
And a truck to pull it.
And a truck to pull it. And again, I just think of it through the lens of him getting together with his friends saying, hey, let's go fishing. Let's go throw some beers back and have a good time. The point of it isn't the boat. The boat is the venue, but the point of it is to spend time in your community, doing things, experiencing things that you love, that bring you joy. The fish that you just pulled out of the lake.
It is kind of funny. That just kind of made me think of Daniel Tosh has a joke about this specifically. Money can't buy happiness, but it can buy you a Sea-Doo, and try being sad on a Sea-Doo.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So just lots of kind of fun things to think about. I want to kind of go back to some of this research. So I was reading, I have not read the book, but I was reading about what is she? I had it up here for the longest time.
She was a psychologist, wasn't she?
She is the Distinguished Professor of Psychology at the University of California, Riverside, and also an author of The How of Happiness. And she has done a bunch of research on happiness and all of this, and I thought that this was really interesting. She proposes that approximately 50% of our happiness is genetically determined. What you got?
Do we want to take shots at this name?
Hit it.
No, we want her to be happy with us. We'll call her Sonia.
Yes, yes. I'm not going to attempt it because I will butcher it. Okay, Sonia. But
I think that's amazing, though. 50% is genetic.
Is genetically determined. 10% of your happiness is influenced by your life's circumstances, and the remaining 40% is within your control through intentional activities.
So I want y'all to think about this. Do you think half of your happiness personality is from your genes?
I think we got a lot of it from you and Dad.
I was going to say, I think that we are very, very blessed and very, very lucky to be born into the shoes that we were. We were not born into different means.
That's not genetics, though.
I mean, it's hereditary though, which is
Yeah.
kind of the same thing. I'd be really interested to see her justification for that.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm thinking, were your grandparents, if you look at your grandparents and you try to put them on a level of 1 to 10 happy, where they were and where you think you are in relation to that, that's where I'm kind of going
Right,
genetically.
but that's only half of the equation. So,
Half
I
of-
mean, isn't the goal for every generation, like, isn't your goal as a parent to try and have your kids develop lives that are better than yours? So I got your bad knees, but I also have access to tools to help me with that you didn't have. And so,
Okay.
again, I'd be really, really interested to see how
Yeah.
she justifies that. But I think that's a big deal. And I'm totally spitballing here, but I would be surprised if there aren't studies that show children that were separated from their parents at birth inherit parts of their demeanor.
Sure.
And so, I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about here, because a lot of this is your demeanor. To say, okay, I'm going to consciously make the decision to choose contentment, to choose happiness. And I think it's probably a lot of it is learned.
Yeah.
So where she's talking about 10% is influenced by life circumstances. But I mean, I still think
40%
that
is choice.
if you were to look into it, we are probably genetically predisposed to have similar thought processes as you and Dad, because genetically speaking, I'm half of a clone of you and half of a clone of Dad.
And I get that. I just was thinking, do y'all, because I can't decide if I'm the pessimist or the optimist, or if I'm,
I think that means you're you're not the optimist.
I think you're a pragmatist.
and so do you think you genetically get that from me too?
I think that's where I get a lot of it from. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think a lot of that is learned just from so much exposure to you and your personality. But I also think that would probably be inherent if I had been given up for adoption.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was just trying to see if y'all see yourselves in a certain way in relation to this. I was just curious.
I think, you talk about me being the optimist. And while I think that there are certainly hereditary factors of that and aspects of that I have inherited, I think, again, especially the last several years, let's call it the last decade, those are choices that I continue to make. I
Yeah.
am actively seeking to put myself in situations where I can be happy, to put myself in a job where I am adding value so that I can be happy with myself. I can be proud of who I am and what I am doing. I am actively making that choice consistently to stay optimistic. Again, I have shitty days. And we talked about it
Don't
the
we
other
all?
day. Right. We talked about it the other day. Callie, I know that this is temporary. I can sit there and say it to myself, but even just choosing to say that out loud to myself or to you is me making that choice to say, I'm going to choose optimism. I'm going to remind myself that this is not forever. Could it be forever? Really easy. But I don't want it to be, so I have to make a different choice. This is only temporary, and I have to remind myself of that.
Okay.
When we talk about 40% is within our control through intentional activities, those activities might include things like practicing gratitude, engaging in meaningful work, nurturing relationships with people that you love. And then her research actually provides actionable strategies for individuals seeking to enhance their happiness. So I think that that's kind of fun. And it was a different perspective to look at it for me, that it was, she calls it the happiness pie.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
You know,
interesting.
that's an interesting train of thought, because we've been talking about how money doesn't provide joy, but we're also saying that you can provide it through accomplishment. Like, that's a big part of it. And so, like, your income is a part of that because that's an accomplishment. And so it's certainly a factor. You can't say,
Yeah.
I don't have to ever work again and I can still be happy. You may be able to, but it would be really hard.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have that sense of purpose, that sense of accomplishment, if you're just kind of wandering aimlessly through life, I feel like it would be really difficult to have any level of contentment. And I can speak for myself because I spent a chunk of my young adult life without much purpose, just kind of wandering aimlessly through life. And
Yeah.
it wasn't fulfilling.
I think we all do that
Sure.
to a degree. That's what growing up and becoming an adult is basically about for a while.
Right. But you have to figure that out.
Yeah.
You have to
you
figure
do.
out that, okay, even if
Yeah.
you think that there's really no point to your life, no point to existence, if you're a nihilist who thinks that nothing really matters, that's a really kind of sad way to exist. So you have to determine for yourself, okay, I'm going to make my own purpose. I'm going to decide a purpose for myself and I'm going to strive to achieve that. And that I was talking to one of my old bosses this week because he recently moved away from our team and he's leading a team of much less experienced employees. And when you are at that level of in our corporation, it can be really tough because it just sometimes it can be a really monotonous grind. You're in a job that's supposed to be very technical, but you're not getting to exercise that technical muscle very much. And so he asked me if I had any tips for kind of getting through that grind. And I sat there and thought about it for a few minutes and I just started writing and I started making tips. And the very, very first one is look at every interaction as an opportunity. Because even though your job is technical, the service side of it, this monotonous side of it, is also part of it. And it's a part that you have to be good at to excel in addition to this technical aspect. And so you can learn the technical aspect on your own and kind of find your own genius there. But this other one it is a muscle that you have to get reps in to grow that service muscle. And if you look at every interaction as an opportunity instead of a chore, that can change your whole perspective, and changing your perspective, like we talked about earlier, can make a world of difference. And the second one that I put in there is be a dog, be relentless in your search for solutions, because there is no better feeling than saving the day.
But that's really good.
Yeah. I read a book here a few years ago, and I wish I could remember more of it, but it was called Grit, the power of passion and perseverance. And it's talking about grit as a characteristic. You can be pretty, you can be smart, you can be determined, but grit is a totally different characteristic that stands on its own that a lot of people don't really give credence to. This woman has gone through and done all of this research, and she has put together a test of grit that she was called in by the upper echelon of people at places like West Point to administer this test to all of these incoming cadets. And she could literally sit there and pinpoint and say, hey, these 6 out of however many, they have grit. They're going to make it. They're going to make it through all of the training. They're going to be very successful in their endeavors because they have grit. Grit was the determining factor. And it really, truly was passion. I'm excited about this. I'm interested in this. I'm willing to dig in and do the legwork in conjunction with perseverance. This is really hard. I'm going to keep going. This is really difficult. I'm going to push through. And so it was so fascinating to listen to her talk about how grit was so powerful and was, again, much more of a determining factor beyond intellect, much more productive for somebody who is talented. It explains why talent is not a guarantor of success, but grit is. Grit is the determining factor. And other factors, you can go and you can get smarter. You can go and be more educated. But when you don't have that grit, you don't have the capacity to, or the passion to follow through on your commitments.
Yeah.
And So they had people who were brilliant coming through, taking this test, and she could literally pinpoint and say, absolutely brilliant, not going to get anywhere with it. And I think that, Cole, that goes back to what you were just saying. Every single interaction is an opportunity. That is something that you have predetermined, and you may have to remind yourself on occasion, but it's something that you have predetermined. You're going to take this opportunity as a completely new, fresh slate to do a great job.
Yeah.
And I think it's so fascinating.
It's interesting that you say that. Going back to Prof G, Scott Galloway again, in The Algebra of Happiness, he talks about that specifically, about talent isn't enough. If you want to be, a lot of people want to be in that top 1%. They want to be in that top 0.1%. And talent alone won't get you in a stone's throw of it.
No.
Because it's not enough. And talking about grit, just to kind of provide another little anecdote here, I was thinking about it as we prepped for this week. Here a little while back, I have not really a mantra, but I play a lot of video games, and I pride myself on being a beater of video games, particularly difficult ones. So a couple years ago, this game came out called Elden Ring, and it is from a developer that is, their kind of claim to fame is making really, really difficult games. And this was the first one from them that I had played, and it's really hard. It's very unforgiving, and I turned it on the highest difficulty because that is what I do. I find a game, I turn it up, crank it up to the highest difficulty, and throw myself at it until I conquer it. And the sense of accomplishment that I got from completing that game was a high that I still ride. And a couple of months ago, I started a different game. It's a wildly different concept, but I started this game, and it had mechanics that I'm used to, but from a system that I was unfamiliar with. And so I just started it on normal. And this game is obscenely long. Like, the average video game these days is probably going to run between 40 and 60 hours. I played this one on just normal difficulty for almost 200.
Oh, wow.
And
wow.
by the end of it, like, I was just tearing through everything, and I finished it, but I didn't have this sense of accomplishment because it was kind of easy. So I've started a new one that is kind of in that same vein as Elden Ring, where it is very mechanically unforgiving. It is a very, very difficult game to play. And I've been playing this one for less than 30 hours, and I'm probably not even halfway through. And I already have a greater sense of accomplishment in this one, because it is one of those things where it's so hard. You may spend hours trying to beat one boss fight because you just keep dying and you just keep respawning and throwing yourself at it until you figure it out and conquer it. And in the 30 hours I've played this one, I already have a greater sense of accomplishment than on the one I spent 200 hours on normal mode, on easy. And so I just think that's a really kind of interesting anecdote to illustrate how rewarding forcing yourself to have that grit can be.
Yeah.
Don't you think that anything in life that you have to work for, you feel better about?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the point.
Yeah. The value that you get because you've worked for it is greater.
It's good for you. Make you strong.
Absolutely.
That says to me, if that we really work for happiness, that we'll be even happier.
I think that goes back to the concept of the eudaimonia. That is, you've put so much into it, the juice becomes so much more worth the squeeze.
Yeah,
you've cherish it.
Determined your purpose, and you've set goals, and now you are reaching those goals, and that sense of accomplishment, that sense of achievement says, hey, I did this hard thing. Mm-hmm. And I can be proud of that, and I can have contentment in that. And now, because I did that, I know I can do that. I'm going to go do the next hard thing, and it's going to be even better.
So what keeps us from being happy? I mean, if we kind of get that
lack of purpose, not choosing a purpose for yourself.
And I think especially in America, happiness comes with such pressure. You need to be happy all the time or it doesn't count. That's not real.
Yeah, but I think that's hedonic. happiness. I think that's
I
the
don't disagree.
pressure that we're getting there is hedonic pressure. Yeah, you have to go out to the bar and drink with your friends.
Yep.
You have to go to the movies and see and make sure that you're up to date on all of the movies. You have to
You have to
scroll
be
through
doing.
TikTok and make sure that you're up to date on all of the memes, that you've gotten the same dopamine hits as everybody else. You've got this same instant gratification so that you can say, oh yeah, I'm happy. Oh yeah, I've gotten, but I mean, really those dopamine hits are a drug.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, they truly are.
Yeah.
And they don't there's no accomplishment for getting to the end of TikTok.
Also true.
And yet still, I find myself an hour and a half into a doom scroll and say, what are you doing? Go do something that you're going to feel accomplished from at the end.
Which I think is part of the detrimental side of, there are many, but one of the detrimental sides of social media. Not only do you sit there and try and get to the end and take forever, but there's a comparison element of that. Their life is better than mine. They worked harder at this. They did more than, they've achieved more than I have. They
It came
have it
easier to
easier
them.
than I do. And I can't even remember who said it. Social media is the highlight reel. It is not the movie of someone's life. Nobody's life. I don't care who you put up there. Nobody's life is 100% what you see on social media. There is bad days. There is struggle. There is frustration. And no matter how much you put out there, whether you were an influencer who's putting, well, this is how hard life is for me today, you still are not getting 100% of it.
Well, it's like we talked about last week. My problems are always harder than yours.
Like always. And so
Are
I
they
think
really?
that, no, they're just yours. And so I think that when you pair that with the expectation, millennials, we got another comment this past week about millennials are so lazy and always complain about having to work. And you're just like, not all of them and not all the time. I'm sorry that that's been your experience, but that isn't all of us. And that you're never allowed to complain about anything, that you have to be chronically happy or it doesn't count. None of it counts. I think is such an unrealistic expectation to have of anyone, much less in an entire generation or an entire subsect of our culture, world, country. We don't need to be happy all of the time. And if you think that you are happy all of the time, which is awesome, good for you. But how much are you working for that? How much is that juice worth the squeeze? How much are you getting out of that? Are you just really good at giving yourself a constant drip of that dopamine?
Yeah, there are so many examples of this in literature.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be happy all the time. If you have a world where there's only pleasure and there's no pain, there's not really any pleasure because there's nothing to measure it against. You have to have both. You have to have black and white.
Yes.
You have to have light and shadow because without the other doesn't mean anything.
Yes. Yes. I agree. I think that it would be so fascinating to go and dig into cultures outside of America to say, hey, what makes your society different? We talked about the World Happiness Report. Let's go to some Scandinavian country. Let's go to Finland and say, hey, what makes you guys happier? Why are you so much happier? And really, truly listen and dig into what it is that makes them happy and why they're happy. America is the land of the free, the home of the brave. The American dream is such a kind of very common in regular nomenclature across the world. But that truly is hustle culture. Work harder, get more, earn more, be more successful. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with those things. There isn't.
You have to understand why you're doing it, though.
Yes. Yes.
And you're not doing it
It's
just
the
to
why.
make more money, because making more money doesn't really do that much for you. I mean, up to a point, certainly. But like the point of the hustle is not to hustle. That's not the point. It's not so that to hustle harder so that you can keep hustling harder. It's to hustle hard enough so that
you can
you
stop.
you can be accomplished and then move on to something else.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I go back to grit, passion, and perseverance. It's not one or the other. And so if you're hustling and accomplishing so much, but you're not enjoying any of that because you're so busy hustling, is it worth it?
No.
What's the point?
What's the point? Enjoy the fruits of your labor.
People around you.
People around you, yourself, what you've accomplished,
The accomplishment.
all of the ticks on the I won column. Enjoy them.
Give
Be
yourself
grateful
something to
for
be
them.
grateful for.
Yes. I also think, we've mentioned several books in this podcast. I talked about Angela Duckworth's Grit. You've talked about Scott Galloway's The Algebra of Happiness. I've talked on this podcast on several occasions about Shonda Rhimes' The Year of Yes, but it's not a story of her saying, hey, this is how you be happy. It's a story of her saying, I didn't realize how unhappy I was until somebody that I love pointed out that I was miserable. And so I'm going to spend the next year doing things that scare me, and how much joy those things brought her. And she just automatically said no to so many things and then stopped doing that. She made a choice.
And I think that's valid. I think we do get in a habit of saying no to things. And maybe we need to be more open to saying, let me try that.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that you talked about in the positive conversations of having to yourself is, this is something new. Let me try that again. It's an opportunity to earn something new. I think that's probably valid, that we need to, be reaching out for new experiences.
Yeah. We were having a conversation this week about a boat and living on a lake. Like, that sounds like it would be a great thing. It would be so much fun. And I said to Ryan, I was like, my favorite boat is somebody else's. I don't want to maintain it. I don't want to have to deal with it. I don't want to look at it. And I don't want to use it all the time. I want to hop on it, go around and explore. And now I've done that. So now I want to do something else. And that locks me into this lake, these same adventures. I want to go do something else. I want to spend that money to go do something different and explore new things and new places and new opportunities and new ideas. I don't want to be locked into one thing. And that sense of adventure in my brain changes. It's like Cole said. Cole, you were talking about that game. Have you gone back and played it and beat it again?
No, because the first time took 180 hours.
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't
why
have time
not?
for that.
Why not play it again? Because you have
Because
other
I want
things you
something
want to
new.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that there's just something to be said about being willing to be uncomfortable, being willing to go explore. And maybe it totally sucks. But what if it doesn't?
Saying you're being uncomfortable and happiness doesn't sound like it's the same thing together.
Oh, but see, we're talking about joy and contentment. Happiness is that hedonic happiness that you're talking about, where it's that temporary, fleeting feeling. But if you go back and you listen and you read all of the most successful people in the world that have the hardest job in the world, you go talk about all of the special forces guys, Green Berets, Navy SEALs, Force Recon, they all have a mantra: get comfortable being uncomfortable. Embrace the suck.
Yeah.
And they all come out
just-
stronger and more positive and with so much more grit because of it, because they say, yeah, this sucks. Oh, well, whatever.
I just don't think that's what we look at when we're thinking, I want to be happier. We're not thinking about, I want this to be harder. Or I
Right,
want
but
this to cost me something. We're thinking, I want to be happier. I want to have more money. I want to have more stuff. I
right,
want to
but
have a better car.
that's illogical, though. So how do you get bigger muscles?
You got to
You
work 'em.
progressively lift heavier and heavier weight.
And it hurts. It's sore. Cole's talking about all of these military people. I'm thinking about parents having kids. I can only imagine every parent that I've ever talked to. This is the hardest, most rewarding thing I've ever done in my entire life. It did not bring me more money. It cost me more. It did not bring me more time.
Y'all were expensive.
Thanks.
Still
But
are
all of
sometimes.
these people who are like, I didn't know that I had more room in my heart, and I didn't, but my heart expanded. I made room. And so I think about parents in that same kind of capacity. Kids, it doesn't make your life easier. It doesn't simplify your life. but it adds purpose. And I think
And
that
it
that's
expands
something
your
to be
horizons.
admired. Yeah. Your
I think that's the
horizons, your
truth.
perspective, your frustration. I mean, all of it.
Bigger sky never made anyone sad.
Yeah.
Oh, he's being poetic.
I love it.
I'm just saying, the message you guys are preaching today is not going to be very well received.
It's hard.
But worth
Cowboy
it.
up.
And I just don't think people
Put on your big girl
want
panties.
to think about happiness being hard.
Tough shit. Do you want to be happy or not?
Yeah. And what do you
It's a
want out of
decision.
life? Do you want to live longer? Make the choice. Put in the work.
So do you have practical tips for this difficult journey?
Absolutely.
We've been
We
talking
came
about them.
prepared.
Embrace the suck.
Yeah.
Get
You know-
comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yes.
Be thankful for the things that you've got.
You know, we talked about it in our Blame Millennials episode. And Mom, you said something that I thought was really fascinating. I said something about millennials. We just embraced the suck. We got comfortable being uncomfortable and making that kind of our personality because we didn't have a choice. And you asked a question. You said, so in several years, are we going to look back and are you guys going to be the generation who's the great generation? You guys are
I'm
the
convinced.
changed, like who's changed everything. And I think that the same thing can kind of be said here. We've talked about gratitude in here. Be cognizant of things that you have to be thankful for, of grateful for. I am alive.
Get a little bit of self-awareness going.
Absolutely. I have people who love me. I can afford my rent. I can listen to a podcast right now because I have time. I have time to do it. And I think that gratitude is so much more powerful than many of us assume. And then once you start practicing it, it's life-changing.
Caught myself doing this here lately. Nathan and I, a good friend of mine, we talk about people's lack of self-awareness. And I just want to say, if everybody in the world was 10%, 5%, 1% more self-aware,
The ripple effect.
the ripple effect, the exponential change in everyone's interactions with each other would be so massively drastic.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been trying to remind myself regularly here lately. I get really angry with people when I'm driving and they do something stupid. And so I've been trying to remind myself, hey, you do stupid stuff sometimes too. Have a little grace. Give a little grace. Don't be angry over this. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
And I'm not always good at it, but I do try and remind myself. That guy cut me off. You know what? A couple weeks ago, I wasn't paying attention. I cut somebody else off. Maybe they just kind of zoned for a minute. Cut them a little bit of slack.
Yeah. So the other one that I want to bring up here is mindfulness. You're talking about being self-aware, being mindful, being cognizant of yourself and what's going on, of the situation that you're in and how beneficial that is.
I make mistakes too.
Yep.
My
Yep.
actions have consequences that may not only affect me.
Again, those ripple effects are felt far and wide. And then one of my personal favorites is kindness, being
But I think
kind.
there's so much value in that. It is a dopamine hit, but if you're even if it's something as simple as, hey, I'm going to pay for the guy behind me in the drive-through, you walk away from that, not even knowing what their reaction is, but you walk away from that feeling better about yourself.
There's no better feeling than saving the day.
Yes.
Even if saving the day is buying the guy in line behind you a coffee, you just made that guy's day.
But you guys, I think take it down even from there. Give a compliment to somebody when you're walking into the grocery store.
I was reading an article today about John Maxwell that said the way to be a great communicator is that in the first 30 seconds of meeting someone, you compliment them. Hi, my name's Mecca. That's a great outfit you're wearing. I love those shoes. Hey, I saw your Instagram post. It was wonderful. You did a good job. In the first 30 seconds, and the whole time I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking, people are just going to fall at your feet if you do that.
Yeah.
And
Again,
it's genuine. It
Yeah.
has to be genuine. But that is an act of kindness to just bring somebody up,
and cost
raise
you
them.
nothing. And I think about it. I remember hearing a story. There's an Instagram account or a Threads account called Tiny Kindnesses. And it's people submitting from all over the world little tiny kindnesses. Somebody did something for me that A, they have no clue how much that impacted me. And B, it was forever ago. And I still to this day think about it and how the ripple effect of that. I was having such a bad day and somebody said something kind to me or somebody did something. He gave up his seat on the subway for me and had no idea that I had been on a 24-hour shift at the hospital. I'd lost the baby that I was helping deliver and I was having a rough day. That meant something to me. And so I don't think that it has to be these big grand gestures. And truly, I think in the grand scheme of things, it's more meaningful when it isn't. Girl, your hair looks great.
I remember reading a story one time about a kid walking home from school and he dropped all of his books. And this other kid was right behind him and he just reached down and helped him pick up those books. And he made a comment about, man, you must have a lot of homework. You're taking a lot of this home. And they ended up walking home together. And it was only later after that the kid came to him and said, I was planning to kill myself. I didn't think people liked me. I was at my lowest. I was bringing those books home to get them out of my locker so my mom wouldn't have to do this. And you stopping to pick those books up made all the difference in the world to me.
It's
One simple
nothing.
act.
Costs
And he could have
nothing.
walked by or he could have called him a name.
It's one of the other things that I wrote in my tips for getting through the grind this week. Practice making someone's day.
Oh,
That's
dang
a
it,
great
Cole.
one.
That's good.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to the eudaimonia, excuse me.
Eudaimonia.
I'm totally butchering this. I'm sorry to all of Greece.
It's all right. You're not Greek.
I'm not. But I think it goes back to that kind of the lasting impacts of that, thinking beyond yourself and the that serves in your life as a whole, the greater purpose beyond just me, I think is so powerful. Those are the kinds of things that stick. I think it's cool. And now I'm crying.
Sorry about that one. Okay, give us a weird
Happy
thought.
Saturday.
Okay. So we've kind of talked about it a little bit here and there as we've worked through this episode. Again, I want to change your perspective here. I think in many ways, our society looks at happiness as the destination. I am trying to get there. I'm trying to do all of these things so that I can be happy. And I think that we need to look at it differently. Instead of looking at it like a destination, I think we need to look at it more like a daily practice. And maybe
It's the journey
sometimes,
itself.
yes, that sometimes it is not today on a whole, but this hour by itself, this 5-minute segment, choosing happiness, choosing joy, choosing positivity, choosing to be optimistic about whatever it is and how beneficial that is long term, that ripple effect again, how big and vast it becomes when you start making these little tiny incremental changes to be happier, to choose
Because it
goodness.
really isn't a destination.
There isn't. We've talked about it. I think
it's a
we've talked about it
lifestyle.
on this podcast before. The reason that they call it practicing in doctors and lawyers is because the destination is unknown. We're figuring it all out as we go. And I think that we need to be applying those same kind of principles here to happiness. We're practicing. We may not get it right every time. We don't know where this is going to lead, but we're trying to get better. We're trying to be more productive. We're trying to be happier. And so I think that we need to stop looking at happiness as that destination and more of a practice.
I think there's a good analogy here. You've probably heard it said over and over and over. Bravery or courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing it even when you're scared. Happiness isn't the absence of sadness. Happiness is choosing to be content even when you're sad.
Some days that feels like a really, really big
Yeah.
ask.
It does.
And some days it will be a really big ask, and some days it won't.
Yep.
But do it anyways. You can do hard things.
But again, these are muscles. Mom, we sit here every night and do our 90 seconds of a plank. And then one day you'll throw a wrench into everything and you just went for 3 minutes. Some days that 90 seconds is more than I can handle. But we keep doing it. We keep practicing. We keep trying to get better incrementally, a little bit at a time. And we keep showing up. And I think that there's a lot to be said of that passion and perseverance.
So we wanted to celebrate somebody today who I think really does kind of take happiness to a level. I mean, a contentedness to a level. So George Wendt passed away this week, best known as being Norm Peterson on Cheers. And so we have some great quotes from Norm from Cheers because he just kind of makes you laugh.
It was so funny to me. Mom found these on the goodcleanfunny.net and they were pulled out as some of his best ones. And I truthfully didn't know who this was. I've never watched Cheers. I didn't know. But the more we read them, the more we laughed. It became his persona, is what I'm gathering. This kind of grumpy Eeyore man and the balance that he brought to that show.
George could just walk in the door and it didn't matter what had happened. He just wanted beer.
Hey, Norm, how's the world been treating you? Like a baby treats a diaper.
I still think that first one is my favorite. What's shaking, Norm? All 4 cheeks and a couple of chins.
Is he actually said being oversized because he was what people would consider he said it was easier to be an actor because nobody expected you to lose weight. You could just be who you wanted to be. What's this story, Mr. Peterson? The Bobbsey twins go to the brewery. Let's cut to the happy ending.
What you up to, Norm? My ideal weight if I were 11 feet tall. How's it going, Mr. Peterson? Poor.
Poor.
I'm sorry to hear that.
No, I mean
poor.
P-O-U-R.
Yes.
Poor the bear.
Going back to Cole's that he said a minute ago. What's going down, Normie? My butt cheeks on this bar stool.
How's life treating you, Norm? Like it caught me sleeping with his wife.
This one is another one that's up there for me. Can I pour you a beer, Mr. Peterson? All right, but stop me at 1. You know what? Make it 1:30.
So, in memory of George Wendt and his comedy and his Cheers.
Be happy, guys. Choose happy. Choose joy. Short term and long term. Be
Even
your
when it's
own
hard.
ripple effect. Even
And
when
some
it's hard.
days you're going to fail. Try it again tomorrow.
Get back up.
Perseverance.
Reach out to
and
somebody.
passion.
Reach out to somebody when it's hard.
Yep.
Build that relationship. Have that relationship that means something.
And let us know what makes you happy.
We want to know.
Leave us a comment. Tell
Shoot
us
a message.
Yeah, shoot us a message. Tell us what makes you happy. What do you practice? How do you get into your flow state? What's your passion? What do you persevere through that you feel so accomplished about? We'd love to hear it.
Your favorite dopamine hit. We want them all.
Love you guys.
Love you guys.
Love you too.